Good morning. My name is Faye Padicchia and I am the Trust Maths Lead, and this is the Maths workshop for parents of Year 1 children. So we're going to start off with what we're going to be thinking about this morning. So those areas are: what is maths? How does your child learn maths at Castlemead School? And how can you support your child to be successful at maths? So the national curriculum aims are based on the three different aspects of mathematics. So normally when we think about mathematics, we think about the computational and procedural skills, which is all of those things that are related to number. And then there are also two other areas, one being the conceptual understanding, which really we focus on now to help children understand the computational procedural aspects they're learning. So really had to understand exactly what they're learning about. Good morning, Mrs. Hughes. And finally, there's the problem-solving aspect, which relates to or which involves the children applying their understanding in order to solve problems. So in the national curriculum, that looks like becoming fluent in the fundamentals of maths, reasoning mathematically, and solving problems. Good morning, Mr. Moore. Can I just say to you that we're recording this session, so if you could mute yourself, that would be great. Thank you. The criteria for in the national curriculum for years 1 and 2 are similar. So it's the national curriculum states that pupils should develop confidence and mental fluency with whole numbers, counting and place value. So that should involve working with numerals, words and the 4 operations, including with practical resources. So for example, concrete real objects and measuring tools. So then the next aspect is developing ability to recognize, describe, draw, compare and sort different shapes. Then moving on, using a range of measures to describe and compare different quantities. So we're thinking about length, mass, capacity, volume, time and money. They need to learn their number bonds to 20. So many children will have learnt their number bonds to 10 in reception. So that means the number pairs that go together to make 10. And then in year 1, number bonds to 20. Obviously children are at different points. So some children will be on track to be learning this. Other children will be finding it more challenging. And so they might still be working on their number bonds to 10, and then other children might be going beyond that, and that's what we'd expect in a normal group of children. Then the final area is about reading and spelling mathematical vocabulary, and that would be at a level that's consistent with their increasing word reading and spelling knowledge at Key Stage 1. So the different areas of the maths curriculum, it's split into 7 areas, and those are place value, addition and subtraction, multiplication and division, fractions, measurement, properties of shape, and position and direction. And if you've been to any of the other workshops, you will know that other year groups learn about statistics, which is about data and recording information in graphs. So that is something that children aren't learning about in year 1. It comes from year 2 upwards. So how does your child learn maths at Castlemead School? We use what's called a mastery approach, and the idea is that the maths teaching and learning is achievable for all children regardless of their ability. So we have high expectations and encourage a positive can-do mindset, and that's really important. So regardless of how confident your child is with maths, that they have that positive attitude towards it. And we try to create learning experiences which develop their resilience in the face of a challenge. So again, that's a really important behaviour that we try to teach children in maths, because, you know, very often in maths, solving a problem isn't straightforward, and children need to have that stickability. They need to keep on persevering when things get tough, and not just give up. And then we would carefully scaffold learning so that everyone can make progress. The next thing is that the curriculum is deep and sustainable. So lessons are designed with careful small steps, with questions and tasks in place to ensure that learning isn't superficial. So we don't spend 5 minutes on something, we spend several lessons on something, maybe some weeks. It depends on what it is, but we really want children to have that knowledge in their heads, and it's really embedded, so that when they come back to it, perhaps later in the year or in the following year, they're able to build on it. We don't have to go back to square one. And so moving on then, the next point is about building on previous learning. So children's learning of concepts is seen as a continuum across the school, so we build on it year on year. Children learn to reason about a concept and make connections. So as they learn about different aspects of maths, we want them to learn about how those things relate to each other, and spot patterns between them. So for example, if they were learning about multiplication, then they would be making a connection with addition, because in order to multiply, you have to add repeatedly. So that is something that would come in at the end of year one and into year two. We also want children to use precise mathematical language, so that their working memory is freed up and they have a deep conceptual understanding. So by working memory, I mean what they are able to hold in their heads at one moment. You know, that in reality, for all of us, our working memories are not very large, so we need to enable children to have the space to think about more challenging concepts. And conceptual understanding means what the understanding of the concepts that lie underneath each aspect of their mathematical understanding. What we don't want is children just manipulating numbers and not really understanding what's happening. The next point is about children developing conceptual and procedural fluency. So the teachers move from one context to another and encourage children to use objects, pictorial representations, equations, and word problems. And there are high expectations for children to learn those key number facts that I mentioned, so that they are automatic, and that's at whatever level they are. So as I said, your child might still be learning their number bonds to 10, all of the number pairs that go to make 10, but they also now might be moving on to number bonds to 20. But they really, really need to learn those, so they don't have to think too much about them. So, but that will take time, and that's what we expect. But all of this will help your child to have a true sense of number. The pupils are also encouraged to think about whether their method for tackling a given calculation or problem is appropriate, reliable, and efficient. So they'll be taught lots of different ways of doing something, and then choosing the one which is the most useful. As I said earlier, problem solving is central to children's learning of mathematics. So in every lesson, they are presented with a problem to solve. So that helps them to develop understanding of why something works, so that they truly have an appreciation of what they are doing, rather than just repeating routines without grasping what is happening. So that's really important. And then finally, challenge through greater depth. So your child might be very confident with their learning, but rather than pushing them on into the year two learning, what we would do is set tasks to deepen their knowledge of the year one learning, to help them with their reasoning skills within that year group. Moving on. So part of the mastery approach is what we call the CPA approach. So CPA stands for concrete, pictorial, and abstract. And this is a recognised way in which children learn maths. So first of all, they start off with concrete objects, so real objects, objects they can move around to help them explore and demonstrate their mathematical thinking. The next stage, once they're very confident with using those materials, is to represent them in diagrams, images, drawings and models. Again, but they might still be using those concrete materials. They might be using both at the same time or moving between one and the other. And again, that's what we would normally expect. And then the final stage is that the children represent their understanding with signs, symbols and digits in the way that we would normally think about maths. But they, as they learn about new things, they might need to go back to those physical materials or drawings or both. And that's what we would expect. And the idea is that all of that helps them to establish that very deep level of understanding that we need them to have. So these are some examples of what that might look like. So on the left-hand side, you can see there are cubes and they're being used in different ways to represent different things. And the colours can have a significance, but very often they may not, and that's absolutely fine. So in the first picture, you've got 7 represented with 4 and 3, but in the right-hand picture, that's still being represented with 4 and 3, but they're just being muddled up. It's still 7, so that's a really important concept. There's still 7 there. You've got the part whole concept in the middle. It might be this way up, the 10 could be at the top with 2 parts underneath it. So it's important that we represent those things in different ways. So we're showing that 10 is made up of 6 and 4 in that diagram. But we're also using the abstract formation to show the number 10. And then finally at the bottom, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 orange cubes and 1 purple to show 9. That 9 is made out of 8 and 1. In the middle, we've got drawings and diagrams showing numbers. So again, we've got a part whole model. We've also got that represented with the flowers. So the flowers are still showing 5, 3 and 2, just in a different way. And then there's a bar model with the football still showing 5, made of 3 and 2. And there's a question mark there, I think. It's a bit blurry, but to show, you know, what is that total? And then at the bottom, there's a bar there. Again, that relates back to the previous representation at the bottom there. But you can see that progression from the cubes into the bar model, showing that 9 is made from 8 and 1. And then finally, you've got the abstract representations. You can see there 4 and 3 make 7, but in the second equation, this is really important that children understand that the equal sign means equal to or the same as. So therefore, if it's at the front of the equation or the end of the equation, it still means the same thing. So 4 plus 3 is the same as 7. 10 is the same as 6 and 4. We can have that either way round. You've got a part whole model, but just using number digits now. So you can see the whole progression there. So how can you support your child to be successful at maths? We've talked about number facts, number bonds specifically, number bonds to 10. I wonder if I made an error there because I've been talking about number bonds to 20. So I think in year 1, I beg your pardon, it should be number bonds to 10. So that's consolidating what children learnt in reception. But as I said, it's possible that they may be more confident and they might be learning about number bonds to 20, but the expectation is that children learn about their number bonds to 10. They're moving on and counting in 2s, 5s and 10s, but they're not learning their times table. So they're not learning 1 times 2 is 2, 2 times 2 is 4. They're just learning to count in 2. So 2, 4, 6, 8. Sometimes people might call that skip counting. Learning to recognise odd and even numbers, that's really important. And what I'm seeing is sometimes there are children in higher year groups that don't know about odd and even numbers, they haven't secured that learning, and then it's becoming a problem. So if they can learn it in year 1 and really be secure with that, it will really make a difference in the higher year groups. Counting forwards and backwards to 40, that's really important. Just watch when they get to the tens multiple. Make sure that they can do that, and either side, especially going backwards, they find that quite tricky sometimes. Recognizing 2-digit numbers to 99, so they should learn in year 1 to recognize any number to 99 and be able to tell you what it is. Knowing doubles and halves of all numbers to 10, again, really important, and that will be built on so that they know much harder doubles and halves. But if they can get that really secure now, that would be really helpful. So if you can help your child with any of those things, we realise that things are quite challenging at the moment. You may well be working from home and trying to support several children, and we know that that's not easy, but if you do have the opportunity, then those are some of the things that would be really useful. So top tips for you as parents. So try to use positive language when talking about maths. I think that probably this is the most important thing. So even if you're feeling that maths isn't your thing, that you don't feel confident about it, try not to pass that on to your child. Don't hint to them that that's how you feel. Try always to talk positively about maths, because as soon as a child has a negative view on maths, then they won't achieve what they're capable of. So that positive mindset's really important. By the same token, try not to overwhelm them with too much either. So little bits now and again, but talking positively. Also, you know, when things come up, just naturally try to include those things. So for example, if they're playing with physical objects, you can practice counting skills, maybe money, how many pennies are you holding? And, you know, money's quite a tricky thing because one coin represents more than one. So helping them to understand that. What else? So in 2 easy concepts to develop with your child, I said doubling and halving, adding and subtracting. You can use all sorts of objects for that. Things like pasta, Lego, dolls, pegs, all sorts of things. It might be their food, so counting up how many chicken nuggets or peas that they've got, or questions like, if I doubled the number of chicken nuggets on your plate right now, how many would you have? If I ate half the peas on your plate for you, how many would you have left? If we added all of my chicken nuggets to yours, how many would we have altogether? Those kinds of questions. The next thing was about memory skills. So one thing that has happened over time is that, for example, in the past, children might have had to learn their telephone number. Well, of course, they don't need to now. So this might seem like a small thing, but you know, there are various things that mean that children don't need to memorize numbers so much anymore. So try to encourage children to memorize their mobile phone number, your mobile phone number, their grandparents' number, and then ask them what they are every now and again. And you might have make a game out of it. You might have a reward system. You could move on to memorizing things like nursery rhymes, and you've probably done that anyway. A quote from a book or a TV show that you like, all sorts of memory skills. A lovely game is called Kim's Game. So you might have a tray with different objects on. So maybe anything up to 10 objects, but maybe start off with a much smaller number, like 5 different objects from just around the house. Ask the child to look at the objects, then cover them up with a tea towel or something like that. And then you sneakily put your hand underneath and take one object away, then reveal what's left and ask them, what's missing? What have I taken away? And then see if they can remember. And then you can, you know, change the object that you take away each time, gradually build up the number of objects, that kind of thing. So on that theme, games are a great way to bond with your child, as you will know. But you can practice mathematical and logical skills with your child through games. So jigsaw puzzles can help children to develop spatial and logical awareness skills. And games like snakes and ladders help children to count the rolls of the dice, which helps with their counting skills. So there's all sorts of games that help children with maths. So lovely opportunity to practice there. And then just watching out for shapes around you. And again, you might well have been doing this for some time now already, but just encouraging your child to learn the names of shapes when you're out and about, and they might surprise you with what they already know. You know, shapes like hexagons or octagons, those kinds of things, cubes, cuboids, all sorts of things. And finally, I've made a list of websites here that you might find useful. As I said, this session is being recorded, so if you don't manage to catch these now, you'll be able to look at them at another time that suits you. But just quickly looking through, the White Rose, I know lots of teachers here at Castlemead are using that for maths teaching, but you can access that as parents, so it may be that you want to go in and practice something. Times Table Rockstars, that is originally was aimed at helping children to practice times tables, hence the name, but actually there's a part of it called Numbots, which your child will have access to, and that's about lots of games online to help them practice those number bonds. And it's an adaptive system, so that means that it will adapt according to your child's ability. So you might well find that very useful. I would encourage you to get your child using that. The children that have been using it absolutely love it. Hit the Button is another free website for practicing number bonds, doubles and halves, all sorts of things that you might find useful. Children have a minute to answer as many questions as they can correctly, and so they can see if they can improve their best every time. You can practice lots of different things on there. The school or trust website has some useful ideas on it. BBC Bite Size is good. There's a maths dictionary for kids, so just in case your children are using language that you're not really sure about, you can look at things on there. Enrich is a really useful website if you want a little bit more of a challenge for your child. Third Space Learning might be useful for you as a parent for trying to understand the way that maths is taught now. And then again, you might be aware of a CBeebies show called Numberblocks. It's really popular, children love it. But it's been written by somebody called Debbie Morgan, and she is a real maths guru, and she advises the government on maths learning and teaching. And this website is of extremely high quality. But as I said, the children really love it. So that's a really good one to look at. Okay, so I hope that's been useful for you. If you have any questions or you know, anything that you want to query, then please contact the school. If